All right, welcome everyone to day 6 of the 7-day course to mastering your biology. We have gone over a lot of material in the past 5 days, and we have a little bit more that we are going to be offering you guys. And today on conquering the inner critic from day 4, we went into detail as to what that is, and we're going to talk about the tools and the methods of conquering that inner critic and releasing shame, guilt, and some of these emotions that are keeping the boat tied to the dock.
Absolutely. And it all goes back to the information in and the information out. Same information in, you're going to get the same information out. So we talked, and we always go back to the stages of transformation because it is so vital that we understand that that information in is a pattern. We have to understand that it's pattern recognition that's going to get us in a state where we can master our life experience by understanding the patterns. And it starts with the thoughts. Your thoughts are the language of the brain. And as soon as you think a thought, your body starts responding. But it's these thoughts that drive these cycles of either more of the same or something new and different. And as we get good at that, you start to recognize that really do lead to the emotions. Emotions are the language of the body. And this is so vitally important to understand how your mind creates your reality. Your mind is up here, and if it's focusing on the lower emotions of guilt and shame and apathy and defeat and anger over and over, that leads down to right beneath it, chemical information that is programmed to get us in a tendency to behave in certain ways. There are sensations in the body. Those sensations in the body then circulating, they have the tendency to make us make silly decisions or not act at all. We have to move over into the new self, where we're sending new information to the body that is designed to get us in this parasympathetic state. And when we're in this state of balance, then we can take deeply satisfying actions based on behaviors that promote self-care and self-love. That is what leads to the transformation permanently, is when we start to replace the thoughts with new actions and behaviors.
So whenever we are trying to pattern recognize, this all ties back into what we're talking about as far as we'll go into this a little bit more into mindfulness, because you're watching how your thoughts and emotions and environment are creating either a reaction or a action based off of the experience that you're having. And we'll go into that a little bit more here in a second. But what you're looking at here is when we were discussing the inner critic earlier, it's you want to see which one of these tendencies is activating an emotion. When are you showing up in a state of inner critic and feeling ashamed or feeling bad about yourself? And then from that space, you fall into the self-sabotaging fear traps. Or when are you being the persona and, showing up not in your authenticity, acting like everything's fine when in reality it's not? Or when is the inner child showing up, coming from a place of sadness and grief? And then again, these are all tendencies. Whenever these parts of ourselves show up, we're reacting. We're not present enough to come from the authentic self to be able to show up in a state of curiosity, in a state of bliss, in a state of acceptance of the as is. And so getting you to this place requires that we get to choose which persona or which part of ourselves we want to show up as. And this is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. I'm showing up as my higher self. I'm not reacting from a state or a place of the inner critic or from a place of the wounded child. I'm showing up as my higher self.
So this is the layers of self. These are all, and there's an infinite number of selves, of our own personas and of our aspects to our being. But to really be able to go into these layers of self, it's so important that, like Satnam said, your awareness in every moment defines your attention, decides your character, and determines your actions. Because when you're playing that role, you respond in that role. It is a choice, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And again, say that again, it's a choice whether you are conscious or unconscious. And that's the awareness we want to start to cultivate so that you can integrate yourselves. And when you're integrating yourselves, the most important thing is that you've got to be that parent for yourself. If you didn't receive that, either way, it's over. It's over. That time of your life when you could have the perfect parents and gotten all the love and support you needed to have all of everything you think you ever needed, it's gone. And now you are the only parent that you have in order to give yourself that level of love and care and support.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely, Nanda. And understanding when you're integrating that you're not labeling, I should not feel this way, or I should not react, or I should not feel sad. When you're placing these ideals on yourself, you're severed, you're bifurcated. And again, that it's not just sunny 365 days a year. You're going to have cloudy days, you're going to have stormy days. And similarly, the human affect, the human condition is that we're going to show up in a variety of different ways. What we don't want to do is we don't want one of our cloudy days or our rainy days to take over because we've brushed it down. We're ashamed of it. We don't want to feel it. So parenting this wounded child means that you're holding space for it. You're bringing it to the surface. You're giving it this abundant self-care. And, people think self-care just means like, I'm going to get a massage. It's self-care shows up in a variety of ways. It's setting boundaries. It's saying no when you mean no. It's giving yourself a hand on your chest and saying, that's okay. I'm feeling anxious today and you're fine. I'm fine. We're fine. And creating a list of recognizing how you take care of yourself. And, when you look at, we're not going to be talking about this in this series, but when you look at like attachment styles or like anxious attachment, where a child learns to caregive or looks to take care of the caregiver or looks for the caregiver for direction, it doesn't to self-care. And so you learn as an adult how to take care of others instead of yourself. So here it's abundant self-care means it's not selfish, but you place your needs at the front of the line. It's the mask on so you can take care of other people.
And choose to be the hero in your own story. Choose to show up as your higher self. This is part of the parenting that we all need from ourselves. It's as if we're our own boss. However, it's not our boss. It's just us guiding ourselves along the way. And if we use that higher self, the higher self is always calling us forward. It's never thinking about the past. If you're to drive in your car and you're looking out the rearview mirror, guess what? You're going to crash because you're not driving that way. You're going forward, and the higher self is calling you forward into better. And it's just calling you into the life that you really want. And so showing up as that higher self and saying, I live by my values. We'll go into that more in tomorrow's lecture about how you create unlimited motivation for yourself by aligning your life towards what matters most. However, you have to choose. It's a choice. Again, consciously or unconsciously, we're choosing a role to play. And when you are trying to cultivate this skill, because it is a skill, it is a learned pattern. So these are skills to learn how to do this. It's not automatic. No one has ever taught us how to do this. You got to grow your brain. This is the other fundamental truth of this situation, is that we have to learn how to adapt and keep growing and get a stronger brain. This is the law of everything, is that adaptation is what leads to survival, not what creature is stronger, but which creature adapts better. And if we're in that black hole of self-sabotage, or if we're not living life as happy and in a state of awe and joy as we know we deserve, then we have to look at the blueprint of our brain. And if the brain's not giving us the right solution, then we've got to rewire that thing.
And it's really
So
important. It's really important to look at, the tendencies from childhood, and to look at things like in our neuroplasticity when we discuss the fight or flight. If that's how you grew up, your amygdala is larger, and the areas of your brain, your hippocampus, they're not as developed. And so growing the brain, it's just like going to the gym. As you practice it every day, that gray matter in the hippocampus gets larger. That means that your ability to focus, concentrate, and for learning improves. And that is the pivotal point of life, is learning and adaptation. I mean, it's so much so that they study this in a Harvard research study showing 8 weeks of mindfulness-based stress reduction run by John Kabat-Zinn actually showed, this isn't a non-tangible study, they actually showed increase in the gray matter of the brain.
that's amazing. That was impossible according to science before this. Impossible. However, we're made to adapt. And when you're practicing, the mindful awareness is is just that, being aware and practicing being aware that you are aware, not attached to any stories. Release any attachments to anything. Release all expectations. And as you do that, you'll experience this process come up right here, where as soon as you drop in and you're trying to be mindful, bam, you get hit with that inner critic. You're not good enough. You're not enough. That thought happens. And again, thought's the language of the brain, but now you're aware of it. And so now you can become aware of that thought turning to the language of the body. And it turns into an emotion, a sensation that you feel through your system. And emotions are the language of the body. And once that emotion hits the body, you can become aware of its effect, getting you ready to take action, like fight or flight. Now that's cortisol, that's epinephrine, that's adrenaline, that's all of these stress chemicals designed to get you ready to take action.
And
And in that moment,
a lot of times we're
yeah,
not taught the mental emotional resilience of being able to sit through an emotion. And because that is an unconscious dysfunctional pattern, that's really important to understand, that it's unconsciously dysfunctional. We did not learn it in school. We were busy learning how to live in a consumeristic society, how to like create wealth, that we didn't actually learn the fundamental system of being able to recognize the harsher emotions that we feel in life, like disgust or anger or rage. And so these tendencies become avoidant, and we end up reacting as a victim, instead of coming from our creator ability to be able to sit through those emotions and then move them up to these higher emotions of acceptance and willingness, joy, and peace. This is coming to a state of causing an effect, the law of causing as an effect, as opposed to when you're in these lower states, you're not mindful of it. And so it's cause and effect. That means you're reacting to life and to situations and to thoughts and emotions. So the prerogative really is the skill to develop is mindfulness awareness when you are in a state of guilt and shame, apathy, fear, and anger, to be able to sit and be the awareness, the observer of it, without the emotion taking you over and you doing either the old input methods of going to, quick dopamine fixes, or being able to sit through them in a meditation and be able to let it pass.
so you might say, well, what do you do? I'm just supposed to live with these things and deal with them. To an extent, they're always going to be there. However, what do you do when a program is not giving you the right solution? You reprogram it. And that's exactly what you got to do with your brain. Again, this is not the easy quick fix. This is the fix to fix generations of dysfunction, societal dysfunctions that have been passed down and down and down. And then now you're left with what has come onto you and been inserted into your brain, downloaded into your brain via your social interactions or cultural traditions, religions, or family ties. All of that has been downloaded into your system. And if you want a different outcome, then it's time to change the programming. And the first thing to do as we go through this to really conquer it is to develop the skill of separating from the inner critic. You are not the thoughts in your head. Those are just thoughts. You're not your liver. You have a liver. It's working for you. Your thoughts work for you. However, you're not your liver and you're not your thoughts. It's just an occurrence. And once the thought has gone by, it's gone. And if we now ruminate on a thought in the past, we're living in the past, but our body is still experiencing the language of now, because the language of the brain, the thought, is communicating to the body through emotions. And so you're living in that state that you're creating inside your mind. This process is called diffusion. So this is acceptance and commitment therapy, also from The Happiness Trap. Really excellent book. But it's teaching us how to be strong and how to reprogram those neural pathways so that you can deal with life, so that you can truly master this biology that has scars in it. Those dysfunctional patterns and thoughts are real neural connections in your past that's like a scar in your biology. And you can learn to heal that scar if you put forth the effort and if you don't identify as that past occurrence.
We're also trying to do here in diffusing. The idea is to actually use verbiage of, instead of, I am stressed, I am noticing myself thinking I am stressed, or I am noticing the thought, I am not good enough. Because it's an entangled experience of when we say that you're identifying as the inner critic, or you're identifying as a wounded child, or you're identifying as sadness and depression. That means your sense of identity, when you go out into the world, you're thinking you're this voice. And these are like spiritual Buddhist concepts that for centuries they've come and studied the mind to be able to show individuals how do you separate from that and realize you're actually this awareness that's observing these things. And so this is the number one step, because you're creating a separation when you say, oh, I am noticing the thought, as opposed to the term, I am an idiot, or I am not good enough. When you attribute I am to any of those thoughts, it becomes, again, how you identify. So diffusing, it's important to use a notated I am noticing to be able to start to diffuse a thought.
Absolutely. And then you expand. And when we say expand, what we're talking about is not focusing in on the micro bit of our existence that is experiencing any turmoil. And by turmoil, it can be the language of the body, emotions taking effect on various sections of your body. So you create radical acceptance, and you tell yourself consciously that I have plenty of room for this, that you can handle it. And that's bringing yourself up to courage to be able to go through this process of overcoming old patterns and pathways that are leading to self-sabotage. And it goes back to the mind errors, where we have decided that certain things are good and certain things are bad. The truth is, they're just aspects of life. And if we can deal with these aspects of life in a more beneficial, in a more functional, in a more adaptive way, then we can really start to make changes. And if we can keep moving forward in spite of these things, then we really are going to start to reap the benefits and the rewards. So it's radical acceptance of whatever comes up is okay, and that I can handle it, and that I have room for it. Expanding and imagining, connecting not just to yourself, but to the air around you and the energy of space that is surrounding your body in space, really allowing yourself to blossom, if you will, as opposed to constrict. And from there, you connect with the now.
This is an important one, because really life is always happening in the now. And if you're not in the now moment and you're going in the past, or you're thinking about the future, you're missing out on what's happening currently. And so this is just a brilliant practice, skill set, habit to develop, is to bring yourself constantly back into the sensory experience, to the breath, So you start to recognize what's actually happening in this current moment, and you almost become immersed in the aliveness of the sounds and the textures and the temperature and the experience happening in the now. And this pulls you instantly out of the past or the future thoughts. So connecting again, using your sensory experience to anchor you away from the past and the future, right back into the present moment. Life is so beautiful when it's in the present, when it's constantly in a state of nowness.
It's what exactly, so well said, nowness. And something to help connect into the nowness is the breath. It's listen to your heart. And if you listen to your body and feel yourself getting in that sympathetic, driven, stressed out state, there is a tool built into your physiology when it's your heart and your brain and your lungs, and you can use the breath to decrease the stress response and lower your blood pressure and decrease your heart rate, and immediately start sending parasympathetic signals to your body. And it's really simple. When you breathe in, the thoracic diaphragm comes down. That's the thing the arrows are showing. That creates room for your heart. Your heart has more room. And when you breathe out, the diaphragm goes up and it compresses the heart just a little bit, a totally healthy amount. But what that exhale, breathe out does is it causes first, the thoracic diaphragm goes up, creates pressure on the heart. That increase in pressure goes to the sinoatrial node, one of the electrical components of the heart, which notices that pressure. The sinoatrial node sends a signal up to the brain, the cardiovascular center, technically medulla oblongata. And from there, it relays a signal down the parasympathetic chain to the nervous system through the vagus nerve to slow it down and to chill out. And all we have to do that is to take a breath in, sip in some more air, and exhale all the way out. Long exhale all the way out. And if you do that type of breathing a couple of times where the exhale is longer than the inhale, it is a physiologic response, like a switch that you're triggering in your body to get it to relax and calm down. And then we observe.
Observing is again, it's becoming the witness. This is a practice, a skill. You want to practice watching the body, watching the thinking self, watching the physical self, the observing self. You want to objectively watch the components and the parts of yourself. And this is really what we're attempting to awaken individuals to, is to sever yourself from, or over identifying with these characters, the cast, and becoming the awareness, becoming, I now have so much power to create and to cause an effect, because I move my attention to what I find to be valuable. And, now that means, really going back to writing out your list of values. Again, this is going to go deeper tomorrow, but committing to your values, living a value-driven life, and then moving your awareness to those books, to those people, to the situations that reinforce your values, and moving your attention and awareness away from the things that are not valuable to you, including old thoughts, old emotions, old triggers, and moving your attention constantly back to the now state and asking yourself in the now, is this serving my value? Is this serving who I am?
Your identity, exactly like you were saying, where you actually change your identity inside yourself as somebody who is value driven, meaning that you do activities, your highest priority activities are your values, whether you know it or not. And so when you identify your values and you identify as a value-driven person, it helps your brain to line up the right situations, people, and information to help you to maintain your identity. Because we all hold ourselves to a certain standard. And that standard is our identity of what we're willing to identify with. And when we start to make changes outside of that identity, that's when we can get in this loop of the self-sabotage. So if we just identify as value-driven, there's nothing to compete with. There's nothing to achieve. It's a good life, just living by your values. and then take action. Take that value-driven action using that 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Don't think about it. Your brain is operating off of conservation of energy. It's going to try to talk you out of it. The inner critic is going to tell you that it's not going to work. All of those voices matter not. What matters is movement. It matters momentum. Moving forward in that value-driven action over time can only lead to success, because that value-driven action will culminate and it's information into your system. And there is no other way than you are going to get that value-driven action out of your system if that's what you're putting into your system. It's that simple, but we have to be aware of those patterns and the cycles, the loops. And check today's tools for growth. We could talk about this a long time. It's a really big topic and it's so important. We've worked with so many hundreds and we worked thousands of people and seen the cycle of self-sabotage. And so our programs are designed to be fully integrated into what really helps to master your biology. And that's rewiring those neural pathways for success.
This
that takes daily.
40 days is the program that we use, and it's just a highly valuable program. This is starting on the 28th of February, and it's going to be 40 days of practicing everything that we're talking about, because it's, again, rewiring old tendencies. Old inputs are going to be replaced with functional, healthy inputs over a 40-day period. And so if you sign up for that 40-day, now you have 1 week to prepare yourself to get the groceries you need, to get the movement equipment that you need, to create space for your meditation. And what's going to happen is in 40 days, you're going to come out of it different output, because you're going to feed yourself a whole food diet for 40 days. You're going to meditate and bring mindful awareness to your body, to stillness for 40 days. And then you're going to do functional movement patterns and strength building patterns for 40 days. And then that is also going to be a system of assignments that we're going to use to reinforce these ideas, journal writing, meditations. So that way you can really start to become the detective of your patterns. As we said at the beginning of this lecture, it's pattern recognition. Over the period of life, you start to recognize, oh, wow, this is how I respond in this particular friendship. Oh, this is how I respond whenever I go to work. Oh, this is what happens whenever I am, going to the gym, or when I go to a dinner party. And you start to recognize and become really good at preparing yourself for the pattern, and then taking a different route, making a different choice whenever that pattern shows up. Clarity is where you start off with. As you said, if you haven't already, sign up for the 7-day course. All the information on this course is absolutely free. We do want to prepare you guys for the 40-day program. You won't regret syncing up and joining us on this thing. Great journey. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Check the tools for growth in this section, or register below for the course for access for everything for the rest of your life. All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.